So I did a little bit of work on my bus yesterday. I was having a slight issue with the throttle pedal not quite getting all the way full fuel. The linkage would go all the way, but the pedal wasn't pulling it far enough. And then we did the same thing on Dan's bus today just to check some things out, and his wasn't all the way there either. Once he saw me do mine, we got into his and needed a little adjustment on his, so you'll see that. And then we were fitting a new alternator, testing the alternator on his bus, doing some work on that, and then fitting a new alternator, an extra smaller alternator to add to it. So you'll see all that in today's video. Just making a slight adjustment right now. I'm not getting 100% full fuel. There's a little bit of play in my throttle linkage. When I set the governor rack to full fuel, I did it with the governor adjustment itself instead of the throttle pedal inside. And there's a little discrepancy. So Kelly's holding the pedal at full fuel right now, and I can still move it just a touch. Not much, but it's still not 100% fuel. So I'm going to go make just a little adjustment on the rack. I made an adjustment here because when she releases it, there's a little bit of play, there's some slop in the linkages, and I'm just not getting 100% full fuel from the pedal, versus this will go a little bit further and move that. So I'm just going to readjust it real quick. Should be nice and easy. Okay, so now that I've rerun it, I backed off the idle screw, I backed off the buffer screw. She's got full throttle on there, and now I can no longer force it any further. I pulled the pin, and it's 100% full fuel now. So I'm very comfortable with that. Also, it was nice to check the crossovers, the fuel lines here, just to make sure none of them are leaking. As long as you see that black oil pooled up on them, that means they're not leaking. If they're cracked or leaking, it rinses that oil away. I know I've said that a few times, I think, before. But just a little fine-tune adjustment, mostly because of the slop on that. I'm going to need one of my machine shop friends to make me a bushing for this. See how much slop that is when she steps on the throttle? That moves, and that's before the rack even moves. If you look at the rack, it's not even moving. So we've got that much movement. If I can show it all at once. Before I even get any movement. So this slop here, it's all, magnified by the time it gets over to here. There's a lot of slop there too, but that's actually moving the rack. Every time this moves, the rack does move. So anyways, that just shows you what's going on. Again. So he's got a Slight air leak on the left rear corner of this. We left it sit for an hour and it lost 15 psi. I sprayed the bags down with soapy water. The top, these are both plated, the air beams are plated. The bags, the leveling valves, everything's soapy water, and I couldn't find any bubbles anywhere. So it's probably leaking back through the system would be my guess. But 15 psi in the airbag system over an hour. I mean, that's significant. You would think you'd be able to see it. So after a couple hours, this one corner will come down with both the leveling system and just the over-the-road leveler valves that are on there. He's got two separate systems, and they both are leaking. So I'm not really sure where they intertwine at together, but something's leaking in there and haven't been able to figure out where the air leak's coming from. We're going to change the fuel filters on here, and these are the canister style, so the internal. One's got a sock filter and one is a regular filter. So we're draining them. There's an O-ring on here. You got to be real careful not to twist that housing when you're putting it on, because if you tweak it, you'll suck air on the primary and leak fuel on the secondary. Fuel color looks good. A lot of times we see brown nasty stuff come out of there.
She gets lots of fuel run through her in the winter.
Yeah. He goes back and forth to Florida every year, and then he goes all over the state of Florida. Okay, I'll hold this. You want to turn that bolt on top? Hang on a second. Oh, okay. I just want to loosen the house. Go ahead. Did I jam you up?
Yep, of course you did. What does this run all the way to the bottom?
It is surprisingly long. Okay, so very carefully turn it this way. Yeah, that's usually where the filter slides out and go kapunk.
Splash!
Okay, see if it'll let you pull it out of there.
It looks pretty similar to the one.
Yeah. It's definitely got some rust on it, but you can see it. I mean, you can cut it open with some tin snips or something too, but it doesn't look really bad. But you got to make sure you get that O-ring out of there, or you can't reuse that thing. That is not reusable. Okay, put the camera. It's a beautiful day out at the Frankfurt Lighthouse. Kind of a crappy start to the day, but this is supposed to clear off in about 2 hours. Serviced the fuel filters, primed them, and we're going to go ahead and start it here and let it run for a minute. Yeah. It's in neutral though, right? Is that what you checked? Yeah. That's getting smoke, so that's getting fuel. Dan wasn't getting full throttle here either. When he would step on the pedal inside, I could push this an additional about 1/16 of an inch to get full throttle. So for that, we just took this nut off here on the bottom, popped this up, moved this bolt back, went ahead and removed this off the thread because it was pretty hard to turn, lubed it up, and then screwed it back on. And now when he steps on the throttle, it does go all the way to full throttle. So we just got to finish tightening this stuff back up here for it, and he should be good to go. Well, we've been working on this 50DN. He doesn't have any alternator. His alternator was fine, so I started messing with some stuff, and he accidentally shorted out a relay that went to it. Well, the starter wasn't working, and he was trying to trace that down, which the starter and the alternator are kind of intertwined in that there's a relay that communicates between them. So if the alternator is producing current, it knows the starter can no longer engage, so you can't accidentally try to hit the starter button while the engine's already running. But anyways, he shorted out a relay. He ended up finding that new relay, put it on. As soon as he put the new one on, it shorted out instantly as soon as he hooked up power to it. The alternator's still not producing current. We disconnected the voltage regulator for 50DN, and then I ran just a new field wire directly to the field on it, and it loads up the alternator. So the electromagnet and the alternator is working, but it does not change the voltage at all. So then I just bypassed it completely and tried to let the alternator run at 100% and connected the main power, 12 volt power, to the field. It would be unregulated, but it should produce, I should have saw 14, 15, 16 volts try to come out the batteries just, for a momentary test. And there's nothing, there's no change. And then I tried to flash the alternator and then try it, and same results. So something is wrong with the alternator, it's not working. So instead of investing $800 into a new alternator, he's already got one from a bus, and we're just going to build some brackets and mount that alternator in here and come off of the power steering belt for that alternator. He doesn't need it for anything other than just, charging the batteries, going down the road, running headlights, stuff like that. He's been fine running during the day using just his solar to charge everything up. But on cloudy days and if he wants to run at night or whatever, so he's gonna have that alternator on there now. So we're just getting all the bits and pieces we need to be able to adapt that into here. We're gonna move this power steering pump up, our power steering reservoir up, and that'll give us a great spot to mount it right here in the middle, and then we'll just go off of the belt from that. So we're gonna go to an auto parts store, hopefully an old school one that will be able to help us find some of the parts that we need. Nice looking Volkswagen. Nice interior. Guys here at the shop have been real helpful. He's trying to track down that alternator pulley for us. They don't have it here, but he's on the phone trying to find one for us. That's none of that asking what year and make model it's off of or any of that stuff. It's got a nice old school shop here. Here's another kind of crazy setup on a fan for a belt. You've seen some crazy pulleys and belt setups before. It comes all the way over here to this, and then here's the fan, and the fan is back in this cage here. So this is like a triangular shaped, but it's as long as my arm back to the radiator. But the bottom of it is open, so it can suck air, and that should be sealed off down there, but that's what's drawing the air through the radiator, is this giant fan run by that big belt to the side. at a weird angle. So the radiator's at a 45-degree angle. It's not straight with the bus. And then there's a big air scoop area here where it's at a 45-degree angle going in. Just something different. Get over. The bolt that was here was actually dragging on the bottom, so I made a clevis pin for it and flipped it over so it's shorter. Mounting this alternator in here is this engine does not sit square, so everything's tweaked a little bit to the side. So like that pump down there is not square with the bumper. So I just gotta keep that in mind, that it looks a little bit off. The whole bracket comes in. It's just the engine doesn't actually go in perfectly straight. It's cocked at just a little angle. This particular governor setup, you have to step on the throttle to be able to restart it. So once you shut it down, this little arm down here, it pops into a groove, and you have to step on the throttle, the accelerator, and then it clips it back over, and that snaps over. So when I shut it down, it comes back, and the engine dies. But it won't. You cannot start it in this position. So once you up front, you step on it, and it clips in, and then that is where it'll idle at, is there. So if you ever have this type of a governor setup and you try to start it, but you leave it in that position, it will not start. And then there it will. So I got the first half of the mounting bracket on. I just used the power steering reservoir bracket there. And then I can move it. But it's very secure on the same plane. Are all alternators like this where the fan blades aren't concentric? I've never paid attention to that before, but this one definitely, you know, bigger blade here, smaller, smaller. Go out to a little point. I never paid attention to that before. I don't usually work with little car alternators. So this is 65 amps for what he wants to do with it. Just running his headlights and refrigerator down the road, that kind of stuff. That'll be fine for that. 800 watts. He's been getting by with just his solar. He's got like 300 watts of solar, have been doing fine for what he needs, other than driving at night with headlights. So nowhere near the 260 amps that he had with the other one, but he'll actually get better fuel mileage because it's going to be less of a draw on it. We'll get that one disconnected. Okay, so we got the alternator mounted on there. We just need to get the pulley on there, and then we measured the belt with a string just now, and we used an approximate pulley size of this can. But we got a few inches of adjustment either way on it, so it looks like we're going to need a 50-inch belt to do that. And we'll see how it goes. I hope you enjoyed the video today. If you don't already subscribe, please click the subscribe button and the bell notification. If you get a chance, check out our Patreon offerings that we have, as well as our Instagram page.